Welcome to tonight's program, which is entitled Creating a Successful Business Plan for Your Startup, Tips and Tricks from the Trenches. And I would like to guess just to begin by asking, for how many people is this the first MIT Venture Lab? Quite a few, okay. And how many of you, if I may ask, are entrepreneurs or thinking about starting a company or working with one? Great, okay, we like to see that. The reason I ask is because the role of Venture Lab is to help entrepreneurs succeed. We want to help you learn how to plan, fund, and operate a profitable company and sell it or do whatever you want to with it for lots of money. And business planning is obviously a key part of that. My personal experience in working with entrepreneurs, which I've done on a fairly concentrated basis over the last 3 or 4 years, is that business planning is one of those things that is hard for a lot of people to do. It's a lot more fun to create a product and to think about all of the cool and neat things that you'd like to do with your product or service than it is to actually sit down and do the kind of tedious work of offering a plan, and yet that plan is what investors need, and even some of the people you might like to recruit, just to know, where you're going and just to know that you do in fact have a plan. A little bit about the MIT Enterprise Forum. There are 28 MIT Enterprise Forums around the world. The Northwest chapter of the MIT Enterprise Forum is one of the largest and most active of any of the global chapters. The Venture Lab is a program of the larger Enterprise Forum. I'd also like to let you know that there are a couple of programs that are going to happen a little bit later this year. On April 26th, we have the MIT Demo event, which is a very popular event where new companies get to demonstrate new products and prototypes. So that'll be coming up on April 26th. The MIT Enterprise Forum dinner on May 8th is the last dinner of this year, of the 2011-12 season. The title is Energy Storage for the Grid, Watchful Waiting or the Perfect Storm. For people who are interested in the topic of sustainability and green technology, that should be a very exciting program. I may have neglected to introduce myself. I'm Dave Watts. I'm the vice chair of the Venture Lab. And we have Chip Hallett, who shares a vice chair role with me on the Venture Lab in the background. And we have other members of the MIT team who are here. And if you have any questions about the Enterprise Forum or interested in thinking about maybe volunteering to help out, please let any one of us know. We're identified by one of these little purple ribbons on our tag. I'd also like to just take a moment and thank our sponsors, those whose names were on the splash sheet that was up here earlier. Of course, none of this would be possible without them. So if there are any sponsors in the audience tonight, do we have any sponsors, just out of curiosity? May I ask which company you're with, please?
I'm representing UW.
UW, okay, thank you. Yay. Thank you very much. We appreciate your sponsorship. So I think with that, enough introduction. I'd like to introduce tonight's participants. Tom Huseby, the founder and managing partner for Seapoint Ventures, and Brian Brewer, CEO of Business Plans Northwest. And just to say a few words about each. Tom has been part of the Venture Lab before and educated us and entertained us a few years ago, and we welcome him back for a repeat performance.
Good to be here.
And Tom is well qualified to speak on the subject of business planning. He's played operational management roles for about 25 years of his career. And for the last 15 years, he's been involved in 22 startup ventures. He currently works with 3 different venture funds and sits on 5 boards, Tom? 10 boards, excuse me, off by a factor of
Two.
100%.
But who's counting? Who's counting?
10 boards, okay, that's a lot of boards. But the more relevant thing in terms of tonight's topic is that he has had to review and study literally thousands of business plans. So he, I'm sure, has some thoughts about what matters and what he's looking for when he's thinking about the companies that he wants to recommend the people that he works with become involved with and start writing checks for. Brian Brewer has a similar deep background and experience. 20 years
That
of...
just means I have gray hair.
I think that applies
left of
to,
it,
yeah, applies to all of us up here. For the last 12 years, Brian has helped clients raise more than $20 million in angel investment. And he helps them by helping them learn how to write and create a viable, strong business plan, and to then be able to pitch those plans to potential investors. So he has a lot of coaching experience in his background, working with a number of the startup organizations, some of which I also have worked with, Zeno Society, Northwest Entrepreneurs Network, the University of Washington Business Plan Competition, Seattle University, Washington Technology Center, where he was a pitch coach for those folks, and the Washington Biotechnology and Biomedical Association. Currently he's working with, I'm sure many of you have heard of Seton Grass's new incubator, the Surf Incubator, for mobile software development, and I believe you're an advisor to Surf as well. So that's great, and before he started working with startups, he served in a number of management positions for both large and small companies, with an emphasis on marketing and product management. So with that, what I'd like to do is, well, maybe I should just say a word about the format before I turn it over to you folks. For about an hour, Tom and Brian will present and discuss amongst themselves various aspects of business planning. And at the end of that time, somewhere around that time, we'll open it up to the audience for questions and answers, and we'll take it forward and run that up until probably about 8 o'clock, and or if we run out of questions, which almost never happens. And I'm sure that if there are remaining questions, that Tom and Brian would be happy to make sure that either afterward or through follow-up emails you can get those questions answered. We don't have programs for tonight's program. We have them, but they aren't here, thanks to the traffic situation. But we do have all of your emails, and we will email a PDF of the program so that everyone has a digital copy and has a record of tonight's program. There will also be videos available through our website. Those get put on YouTube, so you'll be able to see the entire program in its entirety. Okay, with that, Tom, I think I'll turn it over to you to kick it off. And thank you.
So, good, thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
So I'm going to start out talking about why you need a business plan, and then we're going to turn it over to the expert. I am so excited to be sitting up here with Brian, because I get asked all the time, what's the best format for a business plan? And now I'm just going to say, Brian. Right? He's gonna talk about
That's
it.
the new format.
Yeah, there it is. So the most important part of a business is sitting right in this room. You people are what make the world go around, and in particular, you're what make the United States a great country. Kyle reminded me of, I was asked to speak at the entrepreneurial, whatever it was, the Entrepreneurial University, that's what it was. And it was right, unfortunately, 2 or 3 days after 9/11. And you could feel fear in that room. You know, most entrepreneurs, including myself, are out of work. I always say it's much easier for me to start a company than it is to get a job. And I've proven that over and over again. So you're sitting there in an economy that's scary, and you're a big room full of people that don't have jobs and are hoping like mad that they can actually beat the wolf to the door and raise money or kick a business off and get cash flow going before. And I just looked out that room and oh my gosh, I said, this is what makes us great. Here we are, all terrified. What was going to happen next? And there's a whole room full of people starting businesses. My gosh. And I told the story of, why does that happen? There are all these theories. Why do Americans start, why does America and soon to be Americans, why do we attract all of these people that come to our shores, were born here, who somehow want to start businesses? And we have people from all around the world come here to start businesses. Thank goodness. Why does that happen? And I figured it out. And I told the story of my firstborn, Connor, who went off to kindergarten, and I cried. It's terrible if you have kids. It's just, oh my gosh, there he goes, got on the school bus. I got over it in a couple of months, but there he was, launched, and about 3 months into his career, I came home one night and he was standing. He had this cute little sweater on. He was standing by the back door like this, and he had a big star on his chest that said "Child of the Week." And I think to myself, oh my gosh, apple doesn't fall far from the tree. This is fantastic. I go, Connor, Child of the Week. He goes, uh-huh, yeah. And I said, well, how'd you get that? And he goes, I get to set the clock and ring the bell. I said, yeah, but how come it's, and I get to open the curtains after nap, and I get to bring the teacher an apple? And I said, yeah, but Connor, how come it was, and he goes, and I tell everyone when it's time for a nap. And I go, okay, but how come you're Child of the Week? And he goes, oh, it's my turn. And I just love that. So the reason we start all of these companies is we have great kindergartens. He won't remember that it was his turn. He'll just remember he was Child of the Week, And you're all in this room, Children of the Week, all right? You're all getting something going. You're making that courageous step to go out there and start a business. It is so cool. And that's why I flew back from Florida and I was down in California and I came up here because I just love talking to entrepreneurs. Because you're halfway there just by saying you're going to start a business. The other half is the harder half, and that is actually starting it. So I'm gonna turn over to Brian in a second. He's going to take us through what a business plan is, but I'm going to tell you first of all why you need a business plan. In order to do that, I've got to tell my famous Irish Shepherd and the venture capitalist joke. Has anyone in here not heard that joke? All right, so all I need is one hand. All right, so there's a number. It's true. I love telling this joke. So this story about the Yankee venture capitalist on vacation in Ireland. And he's out for a walk early in the morning. He walks up behind a shepherd in the middle of nowhere, and he goes, morning. And the shepherd whirls around and goes, oh, you scared me half to death. He says, are you a betting man? The shepherd says, well, at times I do. He said, I'll bet you $100 against one of your sheep. I can tell you how many sheep you got in this valley. So the shepherd thinks to himself, all day long, all I do is count my sheep. There's no way this fellow's going to know. He says, all right, you're on. So the venture capitalist reaches in his pocket and takes an envelope out, turns it over, and looks across the valley, and he goes, 719. He says, this be more than count. I don't know how you did that, but you won fair and square. Take your pick. So the venture capitalist bends down, picks an envelope, and starts walking away. And the shepherd says, hold on now. He says, how about double or nothing? So the venture capitalist says, what's the bet? He said, I bet I can tell you what profession you are now. So the venture capitalist thinks to himself, an Irish shepherd in the middle of nowhere has probably never even heard of a venture capitalist. He goes, all right, you're on. He goes, I bet you're one of those venture capital fellows now, aren't you? He says, you're right. Here's your animal. Here's $100. How in the world did you know? He says, well, first of all, you showed up largely uninvited. Second of all, you did a fantastic back-of-the-envelope analysis. I'll never for the life of me know how you did that. And then in the end, you picked the dog. Anyway, it's a good joke, isn't it? So what we're all about is trying to avoid either walking the dog or picking the dog, right? Now I don't like to read business plans. I'll say it right up front. I am done with reading business plans. I've reviewed probably 2,000 businesses. That's just in the last 15 years of my career. Well, there's a few before. But oh my gosh, I am so tired of reading business. You just can't believe it, right? So what I want to do to decide whether I'm interested in the business is I want the entrepreneur to give me a really short summary, maybe just PowerPoint, and come in and deliver it to me. And that way I get a good idea for what the business idea is, and I get a good idea of what the entrepreneur and his team or her team is like. And I need those two things to decide whether or not I'm going to take the next step, which is to dig in. But oh my gosh, I will not invest someone else's money unless there's a really solid business plan there. And I will read every single word in that business plan before I part with someone else's money. Now, the reason I do that is not to grade your business plan. The reason I do that, I'm sure yours will have great grades, right? But I don't give grades out to business plans. This is not your high school essay. This is, or your college project. This is real life. And I have to invest other people's money in real life things. And if I don't read the business plan, I will be so in love with the idea that I will forget some of the fundamental drivers of that business if I don't read that business plan. And when I read a good business plan, all of a sudden, or even a bad business plan, it's even easier with a bad business plan, I'll go, oh my gosh, they forgot to count the noses. They don't really know how big this market is. Or there's no competition listed. Or it'll be one thing after another. Because the better the idea, the less focus we get, or the easier it is to forget, easier it is to forget what the important drivers are of the business. And a business plan, it can be painful. I actually, when I write them, I have a lot of fun because I'll come up to some section where I go, and then I'll go, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about this. This could be a complete blindside. What am I going to do to figure my way around? It's not how do the words look right. You know, maybe it's how do you deal with the fact that you want to open up a Chinese restaurant and there are 5 on that block. You know, well, you're going to say this is going to the new Chinatown. Everyone's going to come. There's lots of people. I don't know, but you'll come up with some reason why that's good. And since it's your life, you'll probably be honest about that. I made that reason up, but there's a lot of other reasons that'll come out in writing the business plan. So I won't part with someone else's money unless there's a really solid business plan. And you will not, I guarantee you, have a really good idea unless you take the time to write a business plan. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian, and Brian's going to talk about why you write the business plan and what the content is, and I'm going to react to it. And so I'm going to sit here with you and listen to what he has to say with great interest.
All
so
right.
Brian,
Thanks,
it's over
Tom.
to you.
So
Yeah.
this is, if you're a sports fan at all, this is kind of like I'm the play-by-play and Tom is the color.
Right,
Color
right.
commentator.
I'm sort of the guy who used to be good at the athlete. I'm sitting here wondering if my tie looks right. So, go ahead.
Sure. So excellent introduction about why you need a business plan. But let's talk about, let's see if I can get this to work here. What is a business plan? So, you know, I remember when I started in this work about 12 years ago, I was working in a firm, and someone asked me, well, Brian, we want you to write the business plan to spin this business out of the firm. And I thought, business plan? Gosh, I've never even seen one of those. So there's always a first time someone will see a business plan. But I got the assignment, and I discovered that my background in journalism and writing, I've been a freelance writer for many years, and then the business experience I had, they kind of came together, and I thought, oh, well, this is a good thing. I wrote the business plan. It was fun. I saw how it all fit together, and it was successful for this company. And they spun it out, and then I went out and hung out my shingle, and I've been doing this as a consultant ever since. But so I talk about business plans all the time, but I thought when I put the slides together for this presentation, I thought maybe I ought to answer this question, what is a business plan? And maybe you have some of these same thoughts. So is it an idea? Well, of course, there has to be an idea involved in it. Is it a set of strategies? Absolutely, that's a part of it. It's about how the different components of a business fit together and how well they work and to go out and be successful. Is a business plan an implementation plan? Well, hopefully, yes. Hopefully the plan will have enough information in it so that you can use it as a guide for what you're actually going to do, what you're going to execute when you do your plan. Is it an executive summary? So I'm just mentioned that what he wants to see initially from an entrepreneur is a short summary, either a PowerPoint slide, that's the next one here, a slide presentation, or an executive summary. Those are expressions of the business plan. And then, of course, there is the written formal document that most of us think of as the business plan. That's maybe 20, 25 pages for a startup. And finally, there's the financial projection spreadsheet part of this that underlies all of that. So a business plan, you can think of it as all of these things. They're all the components that go into it. So when someone says, do you have a business plan, you might want to ask them, what do you mean by that? And be clear, because there's, how many people were here last month for the Meet the Angels? A number of people, right? Got a very interesting question from the audience in the Q&A part from a fellow sitting over here that said something about, well, I've heard that you don't really need a business plan to raise money from angels. And what I didn't actually talk to him, but I've heard that a number of recently in the last couple of years from folks. And I think what that's about is saying that in order to get your foot in the door, or at least to get a first angel investment of a modest amount, you don't need to have that formal business plan written all the way out, the 20, 25-page thing. And this is kind of what people say is happening down in Silicon Valley, that you don't need the plan to get your foot in the door. But we sat here and heard these angels respond to it, especially Gary Rittner from Puget Sound Venture Club, and says, if you don't have a business plan, it's a non-starter. You don't even get to first base. So remember, so that's why I'm trying to make the point, business plan can mean different things to different people. So don't assume that when you say that word or that phrase or when you hear it, that you're on the same page. That's all that's about.
Yeah, and just a comment on, there is a lot of hype going on in Silicon Valley now, and here also you hear these stories that are just amazing. These companies got funded with just an idea. In fact, the best presentation that I was ever part of had 2 slides on it, and that certainly is not a business plan. It was TGIC. How many people here know what TGIC is? I'm just curious. Of course, and TGIC was a great success. Oh yeah, and it was a cool company. It was the first predictive text algorithm that you didn't have to hit the ABC. Or actually, ABC didn't have a number on it. I mean, the 1 didn't have it. You didn't. When you hit 2, it knew whether it was an A, a B, or a C. And it would spell the whole thing. GHI was the 4 key, but it didn't know if it was only 1 letter, it was going to be an I. Amazingly simple idea. There was quite a complex business plan behind it. The way we got it funded was we put 1 slide up that said the number 632 million, and the other slide had $1. So we had 632 million phones were going to be manufactured in the year 2003 that could use TGIC, and we're going to get $1 a phone. $632 million a year of revenue was enough to get a venture capitalist all excited. But they did not write the check till they saw the whole business plan. Right. So
Let's understand the difference.
Yeah.
So did Bill make that presentation?
That was Bob Hart actually came down, and I coached him. I had to get rid of 28 slides to get it down to those two. Those of you know Bob.
All right, so here's a key slide that I want to talk a little bit about, and it's what I call the business plan platform. Now, the blue box at the top is where all the thinking happens. This is where you strategize about what your product is, how you're going to get it to market, who your team is, how all these components that we're going to talk about as we go on with this presentation tonight. But that's the essence, that's the thinking. I always tell my clients and people that I make presentations to, do the thinking first before you ever write anything down. And that's what that's all about. That's where you should spend a lot of time making sure you work out the kinks and you got it all so it works together. But then when you're ready to express all that information about your business into formal documents, these are the 4 key documents. There's the executive summary, which is typical, and I've got another, next slide, we'll talk more about this. There's the investor presentation, there's the slide decks, there's the formal business plan, and finally there's the financial projections, the spreadsheet with your profit and loss statement. And typically a summary of those is used in each of these 3 documents. So Again, the executive summary really should be no more than 2 pages. There's a reason it's called a summary. Keep it short. And there's a reason they call executives. We got the word executive in there because of the short attention span that many executives have. If you can get it on 1 page, it's even better. And in fact, many, if you're seeking angel funding, almost all, at least most of the angel groups here in the Puget Sound area use a format that's on the website called gust.com. Anybody familiar with that? Well, once you start to apply to an angel group for funding, they're going to say, put your executive summary in that particular format. And that's a 1-pager. And that's often used during pitches. And again, the purpose of the executive summary is, like Tom said, is to attract attention. It's to get somebody interested in your idea, so they want to have another meeting with you, or they want to dig deeper, they want to get into that due diligence. The slide presentation, your investor presentation, typically 10 or 15 slides, and this is more a sales kind of thing where you're pitching, typically in front of a group, or it could be one-on-one with a potential investor or somebody else that you need to show your business plan to. And those are slides that you flip through and tell your story, hopefully in 5 or 10 minutes. Your business plan is something that you leave behind or send when they want more details, and they can read. But just remember, we go back to this previous slide. All these 3 documents are embodying the same information. They're just in different structures for different purposes.
I'm going to quibble a little bit
Go ahead.
with that, because I think that the executive summary and the business plan have to really tie together, and oh my gosh, make sure those financial projections are the same underlying financial projections, and the summary is the same summary that goes into all of them.
Yeah.
Or else you will be hoisted by your own petard, which is an old sailing expression. That means you clip the flag halyard onto your belt, basically, and pull yourself up. You've caused the whole embarrassing scene yourself.
You don't want that to happen.
Right. But on that investor presentation, I find it useful to make sure you distill the exciting part of your business, the customer exciting part, the part that really will grab the customers and is the reason you're going to be a success, is because customers are going to love you. And really try to distill that into something grabby that the potential investor can really relate to and think about. And therefore, it may not be included in the rest of them.
Absolutely. Right. And finally, the projections, your monthly profit and loss statement for, I recommend 5 years. And the purpose, and I say this a little later when we talk more about projections, the purpose of financial projections is not to predict the future, because you're almost always wrong when you try to do this. Several purposes reasons investors want to see this is, number one, is they want to find out if you know the key financial metrics, the key levers, the drivers that for your type of business, what really makes the difference? What are the, is it cost of goods? Is it cost of customer acquisition? Or inventory turn? Whatever the business or the financial metrics that are the key drivers for your business. And secondly, they also want to see if you have the ability to plan. Can you think things out in advance and make a logical, coherent plan about how the money's going to come in and how it'll be spent? That's really what it's all about.
So we have a section later on financial projections, right? So I'll save my comment on
there.
that.
Okay, all right. Okay, now the title of our talk today was creating a successful business plan for your startup. All right. Well, most of our talk is going to be about business plans, but when I was putting these slides together, I said, oops, well, we better be clear about what we mean by success. So having done this for a number of years, I've heard lots of different stories about how people define success at writing a business plan. So number one, and I hear this a lot, I finally got it done.
Yeah, I think that's a great one.
Yeah, people can relate to that. Yeah. And I want to emphasize this. If you're in the process of putting a business plan together for your startup, cogitate, ruminate, figure it out, but then just do it and move forward, because the plan is not the business. And so in fact, this could be your measure of success. You finally got it done. Secondly, my friends and family like it. Or the best one I got was, well, I want to impress my girlfriend. That was a good. But that could be.
It could have been a boyfriend.
Right, it could be too. So,
Or, yeah.
whomever,
Yeah,
but,
right.
or your mother. I've heard that one too.
There you go.
But be clear about what your criteria for success is. Maybe that's it, and that's okay. Just be clear. Finally, it's readable and understandable, because I've seen people with a mass of papers, and they've got all of the information there, but you just can't wade your way through it and figure out what the hell's going on. And so for them, a measure of success is they've been able to organize it and make it readable and understandable. I can use it to operate my business. Not all business plans are created for the purpose of raising money, although that's a lot of what happens in this arena. Mm-hmm. But sometimes an existing business or even a startup wants to doesn't need funding. They've already got funding. They want a plan to be able to operate the business. That's why it's called a plan. And you'll have more emphasis in that type of business plan on the operational aspects of a business. All right. It won the business plan competition. Again, or got a grade on my, from my professor. That's another valid reason for having success at a business plan. But the final two are really more where real life comes into play, and that's I got a small business loan. From a bank. Anybody ever here applied for a small business loan from a bank? Did you have to have a business plan? Yeah, you bet you do. It's required. And it's also, like we said earlier, it's pretty much required for getting any traction with investors. Yeah. So anyway, those are various levels or criteria for success. We're going to focus on really the last one, because we're all about high startups typically need to get funded not from banks but from investors.
So there's one that you left out,
okay,
which happened to me. I was in between jobs, so I was frantically trying to start a company to raise money in time just before I ran out of money. And it was close. This is a company called MITEF, and I was camping out at US West New Vector, and it was a smart antenna company. We were trying to take technology they developed but couldn't commercialize and make a company out of it. And the head of research who had invented all this stuff was Dr. Rudink, and a guy named Mike Kavanaugh was his secretary. He was his assistant. And Mike was the chief scribe and driver. Mike, incidentally, is a very successful entrepreneur. He's built a big company and sold it, and he's gone on from here. But while we were doing it, I was the thinking part and trying to put it together. Doug was off inventing products, and Mike was trying to organize and write it all. And we did one section after another. It was kind of cool. He'd say, all right, we've got to do the product stuff. And I'd work like mad all night long writing the product up, and he'd get it formatted and everything. And then finally we did financial projections. It was ludicrous trying to remember how to do this myself. And then we got to marketing. And our whole goal was to try to get 2 phone companies to use these smart antennas, and we're going to be rich. And I said, Mike, we don't have to have a marketing section. We know the customers we're calling on. We don't need that section. And I was really busy. And he goes, no, we have to have it. We have to have it. And if I said, why do we have to have it? He goes, well, that's the next part of my course. So he'd been writing his business plan, our business plan, to pass his MBA program. So you don't have that up there.
Right.
You might have to do it for a course.
Right.
Anyway.
Okay, so now we're going to jump in and the meat of what's in a business plan. So I created these 8 sections that are pretty typical. You may have additional ones, or you may put them in a different order. Maybe. I really think you should start with the problem and solution, because that's the foundation for the business. And let's jump right into that. So this is where this can be where your business plan, this is the make or break stage for many business plans. That if you can clearly and succinctly state what the problem is and what your solution is, you're really halfway home. This is also like what Tom said earlier, this is where you can talk about the significant customer benefits and use a customer scenario and tell a story, tell why customers are really going to love this. And one of the things I recommend you avoid is this solution in search of a problem. That often happens when somebody invents a new technology or a new combination of technologies, and it's really cool and it works, but it's not really solving any problem. We see that a lot.
So the worst kind of, so there's two sins that get committed in this section. The first is it doesn't show up first. I hate listening to presentations or reading business plans where they haven't put the problem and the solution up first. I can't stand sitting there waiting for them to tell me what they're actually going to do. I don't ever walk out, but oh my gosh, I really want to. The second problem that happens is they spend forever describing the size of a market. That's the, without, and they will describe actual solutions sometimes without the problem defined in any ways. And that drives me equally batty. So somehow you've got to, I think you, Brian, put it just right. A problem and a solution all in one pithy, grab them by the throat statement that gets their attention. And that is really hard to do.
It can be the most challenging part of conceptualizing your business. So don't skimp on this. And the other key thing here that you see sometimes is somebody will maybe explain a good problem, but then they'll ramble on about the solution, and you just can't follow what in the world are they really trying to do. You have to simplify it and make it really understandable so that someone, and that's the next tip here, is test your problem solution statement with people who are not familiar with your business sector. Because if they don't understand it, you've got a problem. You need to go back to the drawing board and really find the language or the concepts to explain your problem and solution so that people can understand it. All right, then once you've laid the foundation for the problem and solution, then you look at what's the market size. So these are back to your customers, the customers who have the problem. And you want to do some research and talk about the number of potential customers. That 632 million phones is what we're talking about here. The dollars that are spent already in the marketplace on the kind of solutions for the problem that you're going to solve better, faster, cheaper somehow. Total available market is another good metric you can use here. It's about how many people, it's what's the size of the market you can reach based on your marketing methods and the way you're going to enter the market. Market trends are very important because investors really like rapidly growing markets. There's a number of reasons for that, but one of the best is that as a startup, if you're entering a rapidly growing market and you make a mistake or you realize that your solution is not quite right, you need to retool it, well, there's more customers coming online every day, and so you can pivot your business model or retool your product and get back out there, and you'll still be plenty of opportunity to gain market share.
And the rapidly growing market means you're not growing by stealing customers from an entrenched competitor. You don't have to. You'd like to, that's fine, you can do that, but you don't have to do it right out of the gate.
Right, so the smartphone adoption in the last several years is a good example of a rapidly growing market.
So the most common mistake I see here is that the description of the problem and the solution frequently does not relate to the noses they've counted in the market. A typical, I see a lot of mobile and wireless startup companies. Wireless is the arcane technology that makes mobile work. Mobile is typically the things you can do with a mobile phone. And they will quote how big the mobile market is to me. That's like saying, I used to ask audiences, how many people here have a cell phone on their belt or in their purse or in their pocket? And you get hands raised and you say, hey, it's really catching on. Then I started asking, how many people don't have a cell phone in their pocket? And you know, you'd get more hands raised if you said, how many people here aren't wearing underwear? I mean, I'm not going to ask that, don't worry. But too much information. But you know, seriously, you frequently find out that they haven't really thought about their solution to their problem in terms of who really wants that and how many are there. You know, they'll end up coming with a solution that they really haven't thought through who's going to buy it and who it benefits, because they'll come up with a market that has almost nothing to do with their solution. And sometimes when you really force the issue and count the noses of the target customers for their solution, you'll find out it's not worth doing the business. And that's maybe why they didn't want to look at that so carefully.
So, and here's a couple of tips. Sometimes you get out there and you do your market research as a startup. You don't have a lot of money to spend on these expensive research reports. Well, learn guerrilla market research. And we don't have time to go into that tonight, but the Northwest Entrepreneur Network has a great EIQ program that's put on by Therese Adelhock-Smith about 3 times a year. And it's all about low-cost market research techniques. And it's good information. Also, another tip is don't say this phrase, if we can capture just 1% of this market.
I can't tell you how many times yeah, okay, right. If you could,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
You know, if pigs could fly, we'd all need umbrellas. Right. That was an expression.